Speak out with Stewy, speak out with Stewy, speak out with me, let your voice free. Speak out with Stewy.
As I went through high school, I just continued to struggle with what all I had been presented with in life. And I was learning a lot and I was growing a lot. I was finally finding something that I was so passionate about, which was communication. I was involved in my church and in my youth group, but I was in a leadership role and not really as fed as I wanted to be, and not really personally poured into as much as I would have liked to have been. I kept finding myself, or maybe sometimes putting myself in positions where I was trying to help and lead before I had really been fully healed from different things. And so I continued on throughout high school, finding myself in relationships, two particular long-term relationships throughout high school, which again was just part of my pattern of trying to find love. And in the midst of all of that, I also dated guys who were not so great news. And I had found several different times I encountered sexual assault in some way. I'd like to think it's big and small, but at some degree, there is no sexual assault that's small. It just is bad, and it is what it is. And I'm still in this position. I am years and years later, still trying to find the vocabulary to explain everything that's happened to me. But there has been sexual harassment and sexual assault in my life that has been a pattern. So thankfully, that didn't occur in my home environment, but it did occur in my personal life and in my romantic life, as I kept seeking satisfaction and love and wholeness in relationships. I also found people who abused that trust and love that I was trying to seek. I struggled for a while with feeling not beautiful enough. I stopped eating for a while. I just wanted to be smaller. I wanted to be less. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be so much, and for so many people. And I really suffered because of that. There was one boy in particular that we broke up, and that for me started a journey with major depressive disorder. That breakup really unearthed a lot of pain that I had been trying to cover and hide and stick band-aids on top of without really finding true healing from. And I ended up being 15 years old, home alone in my mom's house, and I had a bottle of pills in my hand, and I wanted to take all of them. I was in so much pain at that point that I wanted it to stop hurting. I wasn't mad. I wasn't, I'll show them. It wasn't anything other than just desperation for pain to stop. And I wanted it to stop. And at the moment that the thought flashed through my head to just take the bottle of pills, take all the medicine, at that moment, the bottle of pills that was in my hand ended up on the other side of my bedroom. And to this day, I don't really know how to explain that. I wanted to take them, so I don't understand how I could have thrown them. It seems to me like there was some sort of supernatural intervention that threw them on the other side of the room for me. And I fell on my face, just both in shame and like guilt that was my thought, and also just desperation to make it stop. And I cried out, literally screaming out to God. And I said, you have to help me. You have to help me. I can't do this on my own. I can't do this on my own. I need help. And when I cried out for him, he answered. And he gave me the strength I needed to go and tell my mom, which was so devastating, to tell this amazing woman who had already lost a mom and brother and husband to suicide that I was also at that. It was so difficult, but she was filled with grace for me, and she took me to the doctor, and we started on a journey to try to get me some help. There were still a lot of areas of my life where things didn't really just get better just like that. I struggled with taking my medicine. I really believed in the Lord. I do believe in the Lord. I believe in his power to heal. And I really wanted to just prove my trust. And so I would stop taking my medicine for bouts of time thinking, you can heal me. I trust you. Just do it. And that put me in some dangerous positions a few different times. And I also continued in this pattern of dating in a way that still continued to not be healthy. And so though I was getting help and I was getting better, I still had a lot to learn. And so when I left high school, I entered into a college experience at a Christian college. For the first time in my life, I found a group of people who believed what I did, which was such a blessing. I love where I went to school growing up. I grew up in a very diverse and multicultural community that I would not change for the entire world. But that did mean that there were not a lot of Christian people like me. And so I got a very diverse multicultural experience, but I really struggled to find a community of people who also believed the way I did. Going into college, I found that. And going into college is when my relationship with my faith deepened so much. And I really became a person I really like now. And I really feel like I blossomed then. I learned so much more about myself, about what I wanted, about the life I wanted to create. I felt so much more confident than I had ever felt. I grew up, my whole life was so insecure. I thought people would leave me and people wouldn't love me. And that was a pattern that I was living. And I finally felt secure. I finally felt like I was finding my identity in a God who promises to never change, who promises to stay the same, who promises to love me no matter what, who gives peace. He gives direction. I finally was living that out. I was studying something I loved. I was believing what I wanted to believe in. And I graduated early. And the day after I graduated, I got married. And I graduated on a Friday, I got married on a Saturday, and on Sunday I left for my honeymoon in France. So I left. It was a very big weekend for me. And I poured my entire life into a marriage, in a relationship with someone who I loved so deeply and was so committed to. And in a marriage, as is common, different struggles presented themselves. And there were highs, but there were also some really deep lows. And I was very committed to trying to work through those things. Somebody who also believed, who had the same faith that I did, the faith in the Lord. And that person wanted so badly, I think, to be a good, godly Christian man, and presented that version of himself to me, and I really bought into it. I saw who he could be, and I fell in love with it, and I really trusted him. And he ended up really letting me down. He struggled a lot with sexual addiction, and I was willing to fight and to try to find help and to be honest about it, and to try to engage with community members and leaders in our church. And it didn't really get a lot better. And that sexual addiction turned into sexual abuse in my marriage. And it was something that I still didn't really have the vocabulary I needed to be able to explain at the time. I didn't even have a full understanding of what was happening to me, but I knew that somebody was engaging in sexual activity with me when I was not consenting to it, and that is rape. And when you wake up to somebody on you or in you, or I didn't consent to it, and it happened multiple times in that marriage. And still I thought, let's keep fighting, let's keep going, let's keep learning. I want this to be the fairy tale ending to this childhood of pain. I wanted this to be my redemption story. And the abuse continued and the addiction continued. And finally, for me, the last straw was it turned into adultery. He ended up entering into a relationship with another woman, a sexual and emotional relationship with another woman that he called his girlfriend. And while we were married, he was living this duplicitous existence and was extremely deceptive. And the whole thing was just completely heartbreaking. I was in this marriage with somebody that I loved so much and I trusted so much and I walked through so much with. I had so many firsts. I was still so young and I was trying to build a life with somebody. I had dreams with him. I had plans with him. I had goals with him. I had my life finally solid and secure, and it all crumbled out from underneath me. The mixture of addiction and abuse and adultery was just too much for me to handle. And I moved back in with my mom and I sought counseling and counseling from professionals and from members of my church. And I ended up making the devastating decision to seek a divorce, and from someone I really loved. And it's still something that is heartbreaking for me and soul crushing. It was soul crushing. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And I've gone through a few things. But it was just so disappointing and so sad. And I just felt so broken and so vulnerable and so unlovable and so unfixable, qualified for my ministry. I felt like I had no more future. I had no more plans that I got to live out. In the midst of that divorce, I also got news from my doctors that I wasn't going to be able to have children, which was just another crushing blow. I just felt like there was no more hope and future for me again. And I found myself in the lowest pit that I've ever found myself. Thankfully, I have an amazing family. I have an amazing support system. I have a God who is faithful and constant. I have people like you I can call and talk to when I'm hurting and struggling, somebody who understands my heart and understands what I want and who I am. I have a home that I could come back to, and a mom who could help financially a little bit as I was living hours and hours away. I had to rebuild my life from scratch though, and I sought counseling again, and I got put on a new medication, and I really had to get my mental health under control all over again and in a new way, because there was this new trigger that also unearthed so much that I had still yet to heal from. And I began on a whole new process of reinvention and rebuilding my entire life from the ground up, and of also readdressing all of my mental health and all of my trauma of my whole life all over again. And just like you mentioned at the beginning of this monologue, I do have a happy ending now. I reconnected with my childhood friend who was one of my high school relationships, who I actually broke up with because I had been diagnosed with depression at 15 years old and I wasn't taking my medicine. And I told him, I can't even handle my own brain, let alone a relationship with you. And I broke up with him because of it. But he was also my college sweetheart. And so he has just walked through all of this with my family and with me, and has this whole history with me, and has been able to give me grace in areas where I have needed it. And he broke my heart in college, and I was able to give him grace and forgive him for that. And we've built a new life together. And now we own our beautiful house, and we have a beautiful daughter, and we have a happy marriage that isn't perfect and we're fighting for, but we're fighting and we're doing it together. And I'm blessed. Okay, that was a lot of words.
I hoped I taught you that we can use the tragedies of our past as motivation for success in the future and not use it as an excuse. And I said, imagine what a wonderful counselor you will be now. I hate that you had to go through it. I absolutely hate it. And you know that. I hate that I had to go through things, or anybody that we know and love. But God did allow you to make your own choices and decisions and learn from them. And now you have such a deep well of experiences to share and to say, but look.
Right. Yeah, the scripture I believe in says that the Lord God works all things together for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purposes. And I'd like to say that I'm blessed to have such a diverse testimony and such a diverse amount of things that have happened to me. Even though I've been talking for 100 years, there are still so many experiences I haven't even covered. There's just been such a wide array of very interesting traumas and tragedies and tribulations that I've been able to walk through. And that is a blessing because it allows me to connect on an emotional with so many people who can find commonalities with me on all different levels. And I think the Lord has used this capacity I have for emotion. The enemy wants to use it to make me a depressed, sad, just person. He wants to use it to kill me, to destroy me. And the Lord takes this emotional capacity that I have and these depths of despair that I can feel, and he can use that to allow me to feel despair with people who are feeling despair, and help me to mourn with people who are in a state of mourning. And then also can use that to help me experience joy with those who are celebrating something. I get to experience the highs and lows of life with other people, and that is a gifting that I have that I think the enemy wants to take it and use it to kill me. And if I allow myself to be open to the Lord using that in me, I get to be a counselor and a coach to people who are in all kinds of walks of life, and I can hopefully connect with them and love on them in a way that they're impacted positively by.
Absolutely. It's crazy. It's just crazy because I'm 23 years older than you. And yet when I was having a complete epiphany about my life and saying, I've been coaching speech and debate for 12 years, but God is calling me to do something else. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it is. But then I felt like I needed to come to the Austin area. And I called you. I don't know if you remember. I hope you do.
I do, of course.
Many mornings I sat in my car crying with you, praying, going, am I doing the right thing? I don't know. And so I'm trying not to cry. And that's another reason I wanted to do these interviews, is because I learned so much from my students. I learned so much from you, 100%. I'm so inspired by you all the time. But just learning from people who are all ages, and it's just been such a blessing for me. I don't know if I should even be talking about, my own personal beliefs in these interviews, but I'm just putting it out there too, and we did, get to know so many different students when you were there of different faiths, and we have immense respect for all faiths. This is just the one that we believe. Reagan, I could talk to you for hours, but I'm sure the baby is soon gonna want you. And so I just know you have so much to say. So maybe a part 2 is in the works in the future. But do you have any last words of advice for anyone who might be watching?
I think that I wish I would have understood that it's okay to not be okay. I wish I would have. I had been told that, especially by people like you. I had been told that it's okay, but I didn't really believe it. I really believed I had to put myself together and be together and look the part that I expected myself to play. And I really wish I had known that I had the freedom to be broken. That's a scary place to be. Brokenness is not a fun journey to find yourself in, but there's freedom to be broken, and it is only when we're broken that we're healing. And so if there is anybody who resonates with any part of any of my life, I just want them to know that there's freedom in being broken, and healing comes after the brokenness. It is there, it is available. There are people around you and people, strangers on the internet, who love you and are praying for you and are thinking of you and who want to help you. And there is never, no matter how hopeless you feel, there is still hope. That is the truth. There is hope. Your feelings are so valid if you're feeling hopeless, but those feelings are not always facts. The truth is that there is hope, and there is freedom to be able to experience that journey of brokenness and then to find healing. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Wow. You're amazing. Thank you, Reagan.
Thank you for having me, Stewy. I love you.
I love you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.
Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with me. Let your voice free. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Oh. Let your voice ring and we will sing. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Together we're in harmony. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out.